Have you been on the dark web, Brian?
You ever seen a grown man naked?
I think that what actually happened was law enforcement picked this guy up. Of course, they look at me like I'm a nut, which maybe I am. Why don't you send me some pictures, big boy? That's not the kind of picture I'm wanting. You gonna start paying me? Or I'm gonna not only post this picture on every social media feed you've got, I'm gonna email it to your friends, your family, your teacher, your preacher, your girlfriend. There's never been a penis in this world that's been pretty. Van Gogh didn't paint it. You may have dealt with someone who is not secure. In this case, this quantum individual. Post whatever you're gonna do. It pays to advertise. Objects are actually bigger in real life than they are in those pictures. How much money you got? What information did you give him that he is now given to law enforcement? No, it's baby laxative. I've been on the toilet for 2 days. Just saying, you ain't gonna get that drip, not gonna get any shit like that. You're gonna be on the toilet with the shits.
That's your drip.
I know, right? That's the drip. You're gonna have to learn how to poo in front of other men because that's what prison's about. These are things that you need to consider when you're breaking the law because at the end of the day, everyone talks. Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States Most Wanted criminal, now good guy. In today's world, criminals come in all shapes and sizes, but they all have one thing in common. They all have criminal thoughts. On today's episode, we're talking about the quantum exit scam. Before we get there, let's check in with Brian and see what he's got for us.
Alabama on Thursday night executed Kenneth Smith, the first death row inmate known to die by nitrogen gas, marking the emergence of a wholly new method of execution in the United States that experts have said could lead to excessive pain or even torture. Smith, who was sentenced to death for his role in a 1988 murder for hire, had survived the state's initial attempt to execute him by lethal injection in 2022. In a news conference after the execution, Alabama Department of Corrections Commissioner John Hamm said nitrogen was running for about 15 minutes.
All right, so we had this sumbitch put down for murder. He had been a killer for hire. He had murdered a preacher's wife. I don't know if he had murdered the preacher as well, but sentenced to the death penalty. They had tried to execute him previously, had failed miserably on that, so they decided to test out the nitrogen execution on him. Here's the thing. I am not against the death penalty. I'm not. I think that at the end of the day, it does have some benefit. It at least gets that damn criminal off the street. And my issue is killing people by nitrogen asphyxiation. It has been ruled by the UN, other groups as well, as being inhumane and torture. The Alabama powers that be had said that Smith, in this case, he would pass out within seconds, would not feel anything at all. The truth of the matter is it took 22 minutes. 22 minutes, the man struggling, the man gasping. He was several minutes before he went unconscious. So it was obviously a very painful death. As I said, I am not against the death penalty, but you will know a society by the way that they treat those who are incarcerated and those who have little to no power. We can be better than, if we will be to murder people, to kill people, to enact the death penalty, we can be better than this. For Alabama came out after the execution and said that it was a wild success. I would say 22 minutes of getting someone killed was anything but a success. It did not work or did not go by any means the way that the Alabama authorities had said that it would go.
An Indian man named Barmeet Singh has agreed to forfeit more than 8,100 Bitcoin after admitting he led an international dark web drug trafficking ring that distributed kilos of a variety of drugs. Using the vendor name Liston on the dark web, he operated from the UK, but had 8 distribution rings in the US.
We're talking about drugs on the dark web. So when I ran Shadow Crew, we did not have the drug issue until the last days of Shadow Crew. I didn't want to deal with the drugs. I was that naive criminal that thought that none of my higher-ups did drugs whatsoever. Turns out they all were doing it. The last days of Shadow Crew, we allowed ecstasy in, marijuana, OxyContin, things like that being trafficked on the site. These days, if you're looking at organized cybercrime, for a marketplace, you cannot dismiss the profit potential of drugs. You can't. The profit on drugs far outweighs anything that you see on the fraud side of things. People like to buy the marijuana. People don't want to go down to the trap stop and pick up their meth or their crack there. It's much easier and much safer to do it online. Those who are slinging dope, they don't want to be a trap star anymore. They want to get online where they're a little bit more safer and secure and anonymous. There are sites set up. Altcoinpostage.com, for example, is a site where you can pay for postage using Bitcoin, Monero, different types of cryptocurrency tokens, and every single thing that gets shipped out of that site is part of a crime. It's drugs or criminal products that are being shipped. So that's where we're at now. This guy, 8,100 Bitcoins.
It's a lot.
Think about that for a second. That's a shitload of money. A Bitcoin right now is going for what, $42,000? So 42K times 8,100. I was not bad at math at university, but Jesus fucking Christ, it's a lot. So this guy's going to get, he's in the UK. If he were in the United States, which they may bring him stateside to prosecute, if he were in the United States, he would never get out. All right, period. In the UK, EU, I'm guessing he's probably going to serve 8 to 15 is what I'm guessing. The thing is that, and I've talked to people who are for the legalization of drugs. That might be a nice, fine, dandy idea on paper, but in practice, it doesn't work that way because, someone who's buying Xanax, if you're buying it on a dark web marketplace, the chances of you getting real Xanax are almost zero. The chances of you getting something that's got fentanyl in it are much, much higher. And that tends to be the way this drug trade goes. Just because someone says it's something doesn't make it so, yet they're profiting to the tune sometimes of 8,100 Bitcoins. The answer is difficult. I've never been the drug guy. I never have. I've smoked a few joints. I've tried some ecstasy. I like that bullshit. But, as far as using drugs, hell, I didn't start drinking until I was 34. I keep telling my family and friends that once I turn, say, 75, I'm going to adopt a meth and heroin habit, become the most violent person on the road, and maybe, hopefully, hold court in the street. That's how I would like to check out. Of course, they look at me like I'm a nut, which maybe I am. End of the day, drugs online, not really a good thing because of the counterfeit that's going on, the cartels that are involved, the violence that must be enacted to make sure that everyone stays in line. Any number of things like that. This guy, Liston, that gets arrested for 8,100, more power to authorities at the end of the day.
A new cybercrime targeting young teens called financial sextortion is growing on a large scale in several countries in the world, especially in the United States, Canada, and Australia. According to the report, this form of cybercrime is being conducted by a non-organized group in West Africa called the Yahoo Boys.
All right, the Yahoo Boys. Now, here's the thing. For some reason, I have been getting not just a few emails from people who have fallen victim to these sextortion schemes. So let's detail what that sextortion scheme is. You got your little kid, your little guy's he's on his Snapchat or he's on his WhatsApp and he's digging around. Then he gets this message from this hottie with a body. And he says, man, I like her. So he starts talking to her. And she starts talking to him. Why don't you send me some pictures, big boy? Maybe he sends a nice little selfie. And she's like, that's not the kind of picture I'm wanting. So then he takes picture of Mr. Winky, of the felon in his pants. And maybe he's shaking hands with the unemployed while he takes the picture. Needless to say, he's not really been talking to the hottie with the body. He's been talking to some Nigerian Yahoo fuck who then takes that picture and says, you know what? You gonna start paying me? Or I'm gonna not only post this picture on every social media feed you've got, I'm gonna email it to your friends, your family, your teacher, your preacher, your girlfriend, and that's gonna be your ass. How much money you got? So he starts extorting him at that point in time. The lesson here is that, let's be honest, female body parts are much more attractive than male body parts. Girls do not want to see you bopping the dolphin under the big tent. They don't. It's not pretty. It's not attractive. There's never been a penis in this world that's been pretty. Van Gogh didn't paint it. So, number one, do not ever send pictures of your nether regions out to somebody online thinking that that's going to get them interested in you. It ain't. Second thing is, if your ass has done that, you're being blackmailed, you're being extorted, understand that if that criminal is extorting you, that there is absolutely nothing that you can do, no amount of money that you could ever pay, that's going to stop them from actually releasing that photo or sending that photo if they want to do that. Most of the time, they're not going to. Some of them will do that, especially if you start to pay them. Here's what I advise. First, don't send the pictures. Second, if you have sent the pictures, the best thing that you can do is tell that little Nigerian fuck, post whatever you're going to do. It pays to advertise. And then immediately you start denying everything. If they do send the pictures out, they're probably not going to. If they do, you tell your family members and friends, hey, you know what? Objects are actually bigger in real life than they are in those pictures. That's what you do. Own it. Admit it, embrace it, and go from there. Honestly, though, quit. It's the males that do this stuff. You've got to understand that nobody wants to see that. Just because you like looking at female body parts does not mean that girls will want that. Girls are different than boys. They're attracted to different things. We are very visual people. Women tend not to be like that. So what I would say is set down the video game controller, walk outside of the house, actually talk to a female, develop a relationship. That way you can show her in person. Full disclosure, I am not a druggie. Full disclosure. Now, I say that because I take these long drives, and on these long drives, I just let my mind kind of free flow. So I was driving to Austin. That's a 12-hour drive from Birmingham, Alabama. One of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life. I was like, I'll take this road trip. Horrible. It was raining the entire way. I was like, oh my God, I was tired, exhausted. I'm still exhausted today, a week after I got back home. While I was driving, I was thinking, I tend to think a lot about, why I commit crime, my life, childhood, where I want things to go in the future, and process a lot of the way that I want these shows to run that Brian is kind enough to help produce. But on this drive, I started to think, criminals, me, because I still refer to myself as a criminal. I started to think, it's really a predator-prey type situation. In order for me to profit or get what I want, I have to prey upon that victim. So it becomes predator-prey. And I just kind of let my mind free flow like that. And it occurred to me that a lot of society is based on that as well. Our capital, and I don't mean to sound like a communist. I don't like communists, but it seems to me that a lot of our capitalist society is based on that as well. We profit on the backs of others. The difference between a criminal and a legitimate person oftentimes is to what degree they're able to mask who they are victimizing in order to profit. We have our cell phones, our Apple and our OnePlus. I've got 2 cell phones here. We've got those things. And how do we get those things? Well, because some sweatshop factory in China, maybe Foxconn, are producing those things for pennies per employee. Meanwhile, companies like Samsung or Apple are charging $1,500 per phone. So we continue to victimize people in order to have the life that we're wanting. And to me, looking at crime, and I'm not trying to justify my crime, this is free-flowing thinking that I was going through. It seems to me that criminals are much better at dismissing or not having to have those things veiled in order to profit or get what they want, where more legitimate people, those people who don't break the law, need those constructs. They need those barriers that shield them from seeing how they are achieving the life that they want. And that is the criminal insight of the day. For the meat of today's episode, we're talking about a Telegram drug dealer, fraud vendor. He was like a renaissance man of Telegram. His name was Quantum. I had a gentleman reach out to me, and he reached out to me on Twitter, and he sent me a message. He was like, hello, Brett, just wondering if you've heard about Quantum's exit scam. Well, I didn't really even know who the hell Quantum was. And what he says he says, hey, the exit scam is 1 million and counting in losses, blah, 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 blah. So we started to talk about it. What is an exit scam? An exit scam is when you have a platform, a channel, what have you. People are investing into that. People are buying your products, services, what have you. You get all the money. You don't deliver anything. You disappear with the money. That's an exit scam. We have seen this time and time again on the dark web with marketplaces. You have Silk Road, which was not an exit scam, but the founder was arrested and sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. You have Silk Road 2, you have Sheep Marketplace, you have Evolution, you have tons upon tons of different dark web marketplaces over the years. Now, here's the truth of the matter. When looking at a dark web marketplace, you should consider them all to be an exit scam unless that exit scam is disrupted by law enforcement coming in, arresting the guy, and giving him life in prison. They all realistically start out as exit scams. The people who are building that platform understand that they cannot keep this thing alive forever. It is going to go down at some point because of law enforcement, because of a better marketplace, what have you. There's a rule when dealing with a criminal in an online environment, if you're buying products or services, and that rule is a criminal vendor will tend to deliver as long as it's viable for him to do so. A criminal marketplace is no different. That vendor is delivering that platform for you as long as it's viable for him to do so. He's making a lot of money doing that. For example, Alexander Kazaa, who ran Alphabet, he had pocketed over $20 million back in 2017 simply by running that marketplace. He took just a small amount of every single transaction that was there, and it gave him over $20 million. Ross Ulbricht was no different with Silk Road. You name the platform, those platforms tend to do very, very well, okay? understanding that those platforms are only going to exist as long as the people who own it feel safe in delivering that platform, or until the dollar amount gets so high in the coffers, in the wallets of those different platforms, that they're like, we could just take the money and split, which is what happens with Evolution Marketplace. That guy who owned it, there was two people who ran it. There was a guy and a girl. They decided one day they were going to exit scam. Actually, it was a long-term exit scam. So what happens is there was another marketplace at that point in time called Sheep Marketplace. Sheep Marketplace was actually in the midst of doing an exit scam. They were pulling it off. The people over at Evolution wanted to do their exit scam at the exact same time, so they contact the admins at Sheep and actually pay them to not do their exit scam so that Evolution can do theirs. Evolution ran off with about $23 million. No one knew who did it. About a year and a half later, they did find the guy on a beach in Cyprus, minus his head and hands. Turns out some of the money belonged to the Ukraine mob. They took exception to that. That's an exit scam, simply gathering all the money, splitting, not delivering products or services. That has been widespread on the traditional dark web. Okay. And with that in mind, I think it's interesting. We need to discuss trust on the traditional dark web versus Telegram, because today Telegram is the Wild West of cybercrime. Most people are going over to Telegram because it's friction free. You got crowds there. It's more fun, bullshit like that. All right. So when we're talking trust, because in order for crime to succeed online, you have to trust your criminal peers. If you're buying something, you have to trust that buyer. If you're buying your cocaine, you want to make sure it's real coke, that it's not 100% baby laxative. So you have to be able to trust that guy. All right, because it matters, because you're sitting there snorting and you're hoping you're going to get high, and the next thing you know, you're on the toilet for 2 days because he sold you baby laxative. Just saying, you ain't going to get that drip, not going to get any shit like that. You're going to be on the toilet with the shits.
That's your drip.
I know, right? That's the drip. You got to be able to trust people. On the traditional dark web, talking the Tor browser, the Tor network, you have a large communication channel, forum type structure where individuals from different time zones can reference conversations days, weeks, months old, take part in those conversations. You have someone's screen name. That screen name becomes that individual's brand. You know by looking at the screen name what their skill level is, what their history is, if you can trust them, if they've ripped anyone off. If you can learn from them, you know that just by looking at the name. There are vouching systems in place, review systems in place, escrow systems in place, all with the singular purpose of establishing trust with one criminal and another when they don't know each other's real name, don't know what each other look like, and will never meet each other. That type of trust is the cornerstone of cybercrime on the traditional dark web. Now, marketplaces even layer it even more. You've got escrow systems that are built into place. You've got admins that can be trusted to do the right damn thing on the criminal side of things. You've got PGP keys. You've got sites like dark.fail that actually show the correct sites that you're supposed to go to, whether up or down. You've got darknet websites that tell you anything that's going on that might be interesting on some of these marketplaces and forums. Who's arrested, who's not, if anyone's ripping anyone else off. That creates a degree of trust, which is very persistent on the traditional dark web. Telegram does not work like that. Telegram has a trust problem because trust on Telegram is largely developed through the rapport of the members in those channels. So you start bullshitting with a guy. That guy starts to like you, and based on how much he likes you, he starts to trust you. Needless to say, a lot of people get ripped off on Telegram. Current estimates, 50 to 70% of everything advertised on Telegram, criminal-wise, fake. It's simply a criminal trying to rip off another criminal. That being said, that other 30 to 50% that's real, that shit's a lot. A whole lot. Now, quantum, what's interesting here, So Quandale reaches out to me. He says that this individual, Quantum, had done an exit scam. He had taken everyone's money to the tune of $1 million, which is a lot on Telegram. He takes everyone's $1 million and he hits the road and no one hears from him. And this is one of the messages that was posted. He says, he posts this on the Telegram channels. Hello, everyone. I just woke up to around 100 messages and a lot of confused vendors and clients. We are 100% sure that Quantum has exit scammed. The losses are $1 million plus at this point. This is probably one of the biggest exit scams I've ever seen on Telegram. All the promoters and people who vouched for him cannot scrape together $1 million to return this loss. I lost over $50,000 myself. I purchased this page and was in the process of overtaking it to be able to run it myself. He told me his wife didn't want him in the game anymore, did not take that as a sign that he was going to exit scam. I will be figuring out what to do with this page in the next coming days. I am sorry to everyone who was affected. And he says, fuck Quantum. And if you are lurking, and he says to Quantum, if you are lurking on Telegram, which you probably are, you are a fucking scumbag. And he goes on down and continues to rant a little bit more. So Telegram is a really interesting place to get information and to commit crime because of the rapport of the criminals there. Again, that rapport is what builds, that's the cornerstone of trust on Telegram. One of the things that's really interesting is that we have this thing called operational security on the criminal side. And what we mean by that is, are you sure that you're not doing anything that can identify you? So you're using proxy addresses or RDPs, something to shield your IP, maybe Tor or something like that, something that's hiding your IP. You're not showing your face. You're not giving your real name. You're not doing anything that can identify you, because once you're identified, law enforcement knows who your ass is too, and you're going to serve some time, and you're going to have to learn how to poo in front of other men, because that's what prison's about. So Telegram, not most, but a good amount of the people there, whether they be very successful criminals or just newbies, have very poor operational security. It's typical. I mean, it is not an outlier. It's typical that you can go on some of these Telegram channels and you will see criminals that will post selfies of themselves. They will post snapshots of receipts where they've defrauded a merchant or of credit cards that they're using. They will dox one another. So they will find out someone's information and they will pull his complete identity profile and post it on Telegram. What they're not understanding is that while there are millions of cyber criminals out there, it's actually a very close-knit community. It's amazing what one person knows on another sometimes. So you dox one of these son of a bitches, law enforcement goes and talks to them, and here's the thing, what have we said before? Everyone talks. So law enforcement goes to talk to him, and before you know it, law enforcement knows everybody everywhere, and they've got warrants and indictments ready to go. That's what happens. Telegram is horrible for operational security. Now, I say that. I was stupid enough. He posts this, and I'm like, I'm kind of the opinion to screw around with this Quandale if some of his victims will talk. And I ask him, is there anybody who knows who this guy is? And he says, oh, he's already been doxxed. And my thought was, what the shit, man? You've got, and here's the thing, Quantum was a very successful drug dealer. He was a very successful fraudster. Not only was he successful at fraud and dealing drugs, but he also built his channel and platform up that gave starts to other drug dealers and fraudsters out there. He was like a little daddy, taking them in under their wing. And somebody had already doxed this son of a bitch. This gentleman who reached out to me on Twitter, he connects me with the channel that all of the victims from Quantum have been visiting to share information about Quantum, understanding that this guy's already been doxxed. They already know who he is. So this channel is breaking down. Here's a picture of Quantum. His real name is Adam Khalifi. He lives in Kazakhstan. And so they break down everything. They've got his Instagram from his sister, his brother, his dad. They talk about his mom. There's his Bitcoin wallet address. And it just keeps on going down. There he is again. There he is again. They have some of his family's information, and it keeps on going and going. They post every single thing that they can possibly find. I saw that too. So that is not quantum.
Sorry.
But they post his picture, his wife, date of birth. You can pull all this stuff on him. Here's what some of the guys have lost to quantum: 18,000, 1,600, 700, 2,000, 13K, 75,000 is what this guy lost to quantum.
Yeah.
And you keep on going down, and there is quantum and his wife, Adam Khalifa, and his wife at a nightclub. Those who visit Reddit, you see a lot of the time on a rug pull, which is a cryptocurrency scheme where someone invents a token, they get all the money from the token, and then before anyone can cash out, they cash out, deplete the liquidity pool, and basically pull the rug on the entire investment. They walk away with a few $1 million. The investors walk away with nothing. That's basically an exit scam as well. The reason I bring that up is when that happens on Reddit, you will see many of the victims, they will start to share information like we're seeing these people do with Adam Khalifa. All right, they gather every single detail that they can start, and they start putting these pieces together. Where was he filming? Because he had a podcast. What was he offering? Who was he connected with? Any number of things like that. So bear that in mind as we're talking, that all these criminals, these victims of Adam, supposed victims, they had all of this information on him already. Now, the reason they had that is because typically on Telegram, operational security sucks. Okay? Even though Quantum, aka Adam Khalifa, was a very successful criminal, his operational security was horrible. He allowed himself to be doxxed. He sent pictures and selfies of himself to other people. He told people who he was married to, where he lived, Kazakhstan, places like that. So there was even a picture of one of the houses he had in Ontario. So the question becomes, was it an exit scam? Because if criminals know who this guy is, law enforcement knows it as well. It was all publicly posted. And this becomes a problem with dark web disappearances or Telegram disappearances. You have a vendor who disappears. Typically, that's considered by many of the members, hey, he's disappeared, he's ran off with my money. That's not always the case. So Telegram starts out fraud-based. From a cybercrime point of view, it starts out committing fraud. You're seeing now a lot of drug dealers that are entering into Telegram as well, because the profit potential on drugs dwarfs the profit potential on fraud. If you're slinging dope, you're making a hell of a lot more than you are slinging credit cards. Okay, so because of that, law enforcement absolutely has a hard-on for drug dealers, understanding that many of those drug dealers are also committing fraud. So what happens is, if you're able to identify a drug dealer, say Quantum in this case, you pick up Quantum. What does Quantum know? Quantum knows a whole shitload of people because he's got addresses of people that he used to send dope to. He's got addresses, wallet addresses of people who used to pay him. Any of the fraud stuff he was engaged with, he probably knows the real names of those fraudsters as well. So all of a sudden, he's looking at a potential life in prison or 20 to 30 years in prison. Feds tell him, hey, what do you know? Can he talk enough that he only serves maybe 2, 3, 5 years in prison, or maybe nothing in prison? Depends on what he knows. And Quantum knows a whole shitload. Now, people out there are saying, well, he wouldn't have been picked up in that country. Well, Quantum was a traveler. And while he may not have been picked up in Kazakhstan, you can bet your little friendly ass that as soon as he leaves that and lands someplace, he could absolutely be picked up there. That's my theory on what happened. So talking about quantum, when you're on the dark web, so you go to a place, and I was going to try to show you guys Archetype Marketplace, which deals a lot of drugs. They do some fraud stuff as well. So if I'm buying drugs on the traditional dark web, I will go to a marketplace like Archetype or Incognito or something like that. I'll go to this marketplace. It has a storefront. You have different sellers. You can read reviews of different buyers to see what their experience is. The seller has a ranking of how trustful he is, how many orders he's put through, numbers of things like that. The website itself has an escrow system built in. So say I want to buy cocaine from someone. An 8-ball, say $220, what have you. All right. So instead of sending the seller that $220, I will put that $220 of crypto into my wallet on the marketplace. It will then be held in escrow until I receive my cocaine. When I receive my cocaine, at that point, I can notify the site that yes, it's cocaine and not baby laxative, and they will release the money to that seller. If I notify the site, no, it's baby laxative, I've been on the toilet for 2 days, at that point, they then contest it. They don't give the money to the seller. They launch their own little internal investigation to see if I'm telling the truth or if I'm lying. Okay? But you have that trust mechanism built in, that platform that tries its best to make sure that buyers and sellers remain legitimate. Okay? Telegram, again, does not have that storefront type function. So someone like Quantum, who was a legitimate vendor, he has to have a channel that posts reviews of the products and wares and services that he is delivering to his customers. And this is the Quantum Trap Review. All right. And you see here, he is very good about delivering. There's a satisfied customer. And here's, oh, what's that? That looks like fentanyl tablets right there. It's being sold. That definitely looks like some fentanyl. I think that's fentanyl. Shit, I don't know. I've not done fentanyl. But you've got any numbers of people who are taking pictures of what they received from this guy, Quantum. That's obviously cocaine because it says cocaine. Not baby laxative, cocaine. So you've got all that. And that is one of the ways that vendors on Telegram try to prove that they are delivering the products that they claim to be delivering. On top of that, you'll have people that will come in on their channels and will say, hey, yes, I've purchased from this guy. He delivered the product. So as I said, it doesn't function the exact same way that drug deals on the traditional dark web function, but they do their best to try to come as close to that dark web type trust that they can on Telegram. The guy who wrote me on Twitter, he had been raided previously, and he made the comment that he did not understand why anyone would want to sell anything on Telegram because of the problems of operational security, of the trust of you don't know who you're selling to, any number of things like that. He made that comment, and he said that the reason that he had been raided was because he had tried to sell on Telegram and had gotten compromised while doing that he would much rather any day sell on the traditional dark web. And I have to agree with that because operational security, I know I'm preaching that a lot, but it sucks on Telegram. It truly does. My view on Quantum is that I don't think that it was a true exit scam. I think that what actually happened is law enforcement picked this guy up. They and this has just happened over the last week to 10 days. They've probably picked the guy up. They've got him in holding. He's singing like a bird. They're probably going to let his ass out at some point so that he can try to set up other individuals while he's at it and work off as much time as he possibly can. They may not let him out. They may have so much data captured on his laptop that they don't need to let him out, and he's more than happy to give them the password and walk them through addresses and who's who and what's what and where's where. That's my thought. End of the day, Jim Carrey says it best in Liar Liar. Stop breaking the law, asshole!
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
It does not end well for people who do this. It simply does not. While you may think that you are secure, you may have dealt with someone who is not secure, in this case, this quantum individual. If you have done that, if you've ordered drugs, credit cards, checks, accounts, what have you from this guy, what information did you give him that he is now given to law enforcement? At the very least, you've gave him a wallet address. At the most, you've given him your name, your home address, bullshit like that, maybe even a selfie of yourself. These are things that you need to consider when you're breaking the law, because at the end of the day, everyone talks. My name is Brett Johnson. This is the Criminal Thoughts Podcast, and we are closing things out on that high note. How do we do it? Same way, every time. Stay safe, stay secure, and stay vigilant. You see, that shit not only applies to the good guys, it applies to you bad guys that are out there too, because you ain't staying safe, you're not secure, and bullshit like this, you damn sure ain't vigilant. End of the day, though, it becomes much, much easier if you just do the right damn thing. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.